Hello and welcome to Spill the Tea. True Stories, the place where real life is more fascinating than fiction. Sit back, pour yourself a cup of tea, and let's dive into the moments that stay with us forever. We're starting now. The ringtone of the phone, sounding around noon on a regular working Thursday, once again divided Anna's life into the happy period before and the almost hopeless one after. A familiar word lit up on the screen: Mom. Although calls in the middle of the day weren't frequent, the woman didn't feel anything bad. Maybe Margaret missed her or wanted advice on an outfit. Anna made a pencil mark on the margin of the document and hurried to answer so as not to keep her loved one waiting. As soon as she heard her mother's voice, which seemed unusually muffled, her heart sank. It was clear that something bad had happened, and unfortunately, her premonition was confirmed. Annie, hello. Just don't worry too much, please. It turns out I'm in the hospital right now. Anna became anxious. Mom? What happened? Which hospital are you in? What are the doctors saying? What should I bring? What's the room number? The voice on the other end interrupted her stream of questions. Annie, I beg you, don't worry. It all happened like in a movie. I slipped, I fell, I almost lost consciousness. But everything's fine. My neighbor Susan was passing by. She supported me while we waited for the ambulance. The doctor said everything would be okay, but I'll have to stay in the hospital for a little while. Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? I would have rushed right over, helped. I didn't want to bother you in the middle of your workday, but visiting hours here are only in the evening, from 4 to 7, and if you go home first, then to the pharmacy, I was afraid you might not make it. Anyway, please write down what you need to bring here. The main thing is my insurance card and phone charger. Also, water, non-carbonated, because I'm really thirsty. Invisible to Anna, Margaret sighed, and the woman vividly imagined how her loved one's face was contorted with pain. She hurried to end the conversation, clarifying the hospital and room number. Anna reread the list her mother had dictated, added chicken broth and wet wipes, and with stiff legs, went to ask her boss for permission to leave. Paul, may I please leave early today? I have personal circumstances. My mother is in the hospital. Her boss, a friend of Andrew's from their student years, expressed sympathy and, upon learning which hospital his subordinate's mother was in, encouraged her. The doctors at our regional hospital are good. The setting might not be luxurious, but the equipment and staff are top-notch. I've been there a few times myself, discharged feeling brand new. So everything will be fine, don't be down. He asked. By the way, are you driving today, or is Andrew? Maybe Steve can give you a ride. Anna was touched by his concern and decided it was inappropriate to refuse now. Thank you, Paul. That would be very helpful. I won't keep the driver long. I just need to stop by Mom's place and that's it. She added, I won't hold Steve up any longer. I'll gather what I need there and then call a taxi. Thank you. Her manager wished Anna luck and promised, come out to the central entrance in 15 minutes. I'll tell Steve to wait for you at your mother's house and drive you to your and Andrew's place. He has to come back for me anyway, and your house is on the way. Thanking her thoughtful boss again, Anna went to shut down her computer and tidy up her workspace. She took the contract with her so as not to let down her colleagues and finish the work by the next morning. The woman didn't quite grasp the jokes that Steve the driver tried to entertain her with, but she was grateful that his chatter made her react somehow and kept her from sinking into anxious thoughts. Following the list, checking off each item, Annie gathered things at Margaret's apartment, watered her favorite flowers, and just in case, turned off the gas and water. She checked the refrigerator for perishable food, gathered the trash to throw out, and only then went downstairs and continued on with the talkative Steve. Not far from her and Andrew's house was a supermarket with a pharmacy section, and Anna decided to stop there on the way. Asking Steve to pull over by the trash containers, she threw out the garbage and hurried to shop. Moving almost on autopilot, Annie bought everything necessary and soon was simultaneously preparing dinner for her husband and broth for her mother. While the food was cooking and baking, Anna called Andrew and explained the situation. "Andy, Mom's in the hospital. I'm going to her. I don't know yet how long I'll be there. Dinner's on the stove." Her husband admitted, "I know. Paul told me you needed support. Wait for me. I'll try to get home early and we'll go together. You never know what might be needed. And this way, I'll be close by." Andrew didn't let his wife down, and picking her up along with the 2 packed bags, drove her to the hospital. Anna managed to persuade the nurse receiving deliveries to let her see her mother and the attending physician, who, fortunately, was there. Andrew waited in the lobby but sent his best wishes for a speedy recovery. Margaret tried to smile when she saw Annie enter the room, but it was clear she was both uncomfortable and scared. The woman quietly but distinctly greeted everyone in the room and approached her mother's bed. A weight was suspended from the unfortunate woman's right leg. Her lips, bitten almost to the point of bleeding, clearly testified to severe pain. Anna listened to her mother's story about what had happened and, trying not to cry, began putting the things she had brought into the bedside cabinet. She immediately put the phone on charge. Annie gave her mother some broth and made her eat a few spoons of raw grated carrots. "The internet says this kind of salad is the best vitamin remedy in the first days after an injury. Then I'll give you some sour berry juice, that's healthy too." "Oh, daughter, don't worry. You should probably go. Andrew will come home. He'll probably be surprised you're not there." Annie explained that her husband knew what had happened, had rushed home so she wouldn't have to take a taxi, that he hadn't been allowed in, but he sent his regards. As if only waiting for this remark, the woman in the next bed livened up. "The orderlies and nurses here are rude and boorish," she butted into the conversation. "You can't get hold of them day or night. They just drink tea and hover around the doctors. Giving them chocolates, even money, is useless. They still do a half-hearted job." Anna remained silent and, after asking her mother the name and patronymic of her attending physician, went to look for him. The restless neighbor didn't miss the opportunity to remark here either. "If he's not in the staff room, check the dressing room. He's probably sweet-talking someone there." Dryly thanking the grumbler, Annie went out into the corridor. The nurses in the trauma department, accustomed to various relatives of patients, tears, and hysterics, looked at the visitor asking about the doctor with a mixture of weariness and irritation. But one of them, who seemed to be the senior nurse, answered in detail. "Dr. Robert is currently in the head doctor's office, down that end of the corridor, the second to last door. You can wait there or sit on the bench here near the staff room." Annie waited for the doctor, and he, upon learning that she was Margaret's daughter, invited her into the office. Showing the X-ray on the screen, Dr. Robert explained, "If you can say so, your mother's fracture was a good one. There are generally 2 treatment options." He began to talk about the nuances of each, then asked, "Which option have you decided on?" Anna looked the doctor in the eyes but didn't answer, instead asking a counter-question. "Tell me, Dr. Robert, if someone close to you had a fracture like my mother's, what would you recommend?" Smiling, the doctor briefly replied, "Osteosynthesis. In a very similar case with my aunt, our head doctor performed a similar operation. She's been leading an active life again for a year now, even working in her garden, so I can't keep up with her." The woman clarified all the details of the upcoming operation, wrote down what else needed to be brought for the post-operative period, and, saying goodbye to the doctor, left. Annie had to inform her mother that the operation was scheduled for the next day, and, steeling herself, she presented it as lightly as possible, trying not to worry her loved one. "I'll come tomorrow. I'll meet you after the operation. Everything will be fine. Don't worry." "Annie, what about your work? Your boss will probably be angry?" "Don't you worry about that. I'll get all the work done and won't let either you or my boss down." With the operation, the long journey for Margaret to be able to walk again had only just begun. For 2 weeks, Annie visited her mother almost daily to feed and care for her. Margaret tried to object and said more than once, "Annie, take care of yourself. Don't come here so often. The food here isn't bad and I don't have much appetite anyway. Where would it come from if I'm not expending any energy?" However, she couldn't convince her daughter. When the day of discharge arrived, Anna went to the doctor for recommendations. Dr. Robert was cautious and warned, "Your mother is a very energetic lady, but I've already expressed my point of view and I'll repeat it to you. I wouldn't be overly optimistic if I were you. But there's no need to despair either. However, she cannot fully bear weight on the injured limb. Crutches are Margaret's best friends for at least the next month," he added. "And even after that, she needs to be careful. Moving is necessary, of course, but cautiously. Preventive treatment is indicated to prevent bed sores. I'll expect her back for a control X-ray in 6 weeks to check how the bone is fusing. That seems to be everything." Anna clarified, "Maybe Mom should take some vitamins?" Dr. Robert shrugged. "In principle, yes. But generally, the rehabilitation plan should be explained to you at the local polyclinic." Anna called a special taxi for transporting people with limited mobility, and after heroically navigating the approach streets, Margaret finally found herself in her apartment. A new problem arose for Anna. Her mother's physical condition left much to be desired, and even a simple trip to the bathroom or kitchen could result in a new injury. At first, Anna came to Margaret's twice a day, and by the time the New Year holidays approached, she was almost exhausted. Traffic jams took up so much time that only a few miserable hours were left for sleep. Annie turned to her husband. "Andy, let's have Mom stay with us for a while. At least I won't have to rush between apartments." The man's face darkened, and after a heavy pause he replied, "Annie, I think highly of your mother. Margaret is a wonderful woman, but I'm sorry, I'll be blunt. We simply have nowhere to put her. We live in a studio, as you know. The room is large, but there's only one. When I tried to persuade you to go for the mortgage, I didn't get any understanding. Both you and your mother were against it." "Andy, but couldn't we put up a screen? It would be like 2 rooms." "Listen, Margaret would be the most uncomfortable. I play computer games loudly. I listen to music late into the night. Besides, ask her yourself if she'll agree to move. I'm 100% sure she'll refuse. Your mother is very tactful and wise. She understands that the further away she lives, the better her relationship with her son-in-law will be." Andrew was right. Margaret, as soon as she heard the idea of moving, snorted in indignation. "There can't even be a conversation about it. Home is where the heart is, and the walls help. I won't come to your place, especially since it would be uncomfortable to be sick there." Annie obeyed her mother's will, and she didn't want to argue with her husband either. She continued to spend time in traffic jams and had to leave her job as a lawyer. With her boss's permission, Anna transferred to part-time and was very glad that Paul had met her halfway. She prepared contracts during her visits, trained her successor, and diligently performed all duties that didn't require constant presence in the office. However, rehabilitation cost much more money than the woman could have imagined. Sometimes she shared her indignation with her husband about pharmacies changing prices as they pleased and trying to sell the most expensive version of medication. Then Andrew would start grumbling, "Listen, Annie, but surely your mother should be getting some free medication." The woman tried not to answer this. The family budget didn't suffer, and she hadn't asked her husband for money in the almost 6 months that had passed since the news of her mother's troubles. Annie generally tried to manage on her own, not involving Andrew. The weather changed, but Anna's schedule, by established tradition, remained almost unchanged. In the morning, she prepared breakfast for her husband and, if she had time, prepared lunch and dinner. Then, packing a portion of breakfast into a container, she rushed to her mother's, stopping at the store and pharmacies along the way. Care, maintaining morale, and helping with movement took a lot of time. After that, Annie stopped by the office and hurried home in the evening. In case of emergencies, the key to her mother's apartment was with her neighbor, the same Susan who had helped wait for the ambulance. She sometimes visited to watch television together and gossip, so Margaret couldn't be called abandoned. But Annie desperately wanted to get her mother back on her feet quickly, and not just because she had to spend a lot of time on daily commutes between distant parts of the city. It was simply because her mother was the closest person to her. She had, in essence, given Anna life twice, the first time on her birthday 38 years ago, but the main time was later, when a terrible tragedy struck Annie like an avalanche. It was her mother who was by her side in those dark days, helping her move when her legs almost gave out from nervous shock, forcing her to drink and eat with persuasion, sometimes by force. Leaving her well-paying job, Margaret sold her apartment in their former city and, almost like a huge, unwieldy bundle, moved her 2,000 kilometers away from the place where everything reminded Anna of her inhuman grief. It was Margaret who made her get a job where it was almost impossible to be alone with sad thoughts, where she had to look stylish and fit. Annie didn't consider her help to her mother a sacrifice, and, despite her fatigue, tried to surround her husband with care as well. Especially since their 10th wedding anniversary was approaching, and the woman wanted to arrange a touching congratulation and a pleasant surprise for her patient Andrew. She had prepared a preliminary menu in advance, found a confectionery that took orders for individual designs, and arranged for an unusual cake to be made for her husband, who adored sweets. The holiday was approaching, but shortly before it, Andrew warned during breakfast one morning. "Sorry, Annie, I need the car for a few days. I need to go to the branch in the neighboring region. It looks like the manager there is messing with the reports. Profits have dropped significantly, although in other branches everything is stable, and in some places there's even growth." He added, "I'll try to be quick, of course, but planes probably don't fly there, and I really don't want to take the train. Can you manage without the car?" Although Anna had also counted on the car, she didn't argue. In the end, her husband really needed it more. She smiled. "Of course I can manage." Andrew politely thanked her for breakfast and promised, "Don't worry, we'll buy you a car too. Once things at work normalize a bit, you can choose the model." Leaving the house, the man kissed his wife on the cheek, winked, and said, "Don't worry, I remember our anniversary. I'll try to be back by Friday evening." Taking advantage of her husband's absence, Anna temporarily moved in with her mother to save time on travel. During these few days, she managed to do a thorough cleaning, and the apartment felt especially fresh and spring-like. Only the day before the holiday did Annie have to return home to bring a diploma that was urgently needed at the office. However, this was convenient because she also needed to tidy up the house and prepare some of Andrew's favorite salads. In the morning, the woman, taking the festive dishes she had set aside in containers, rushed to her mother's again. She habitually gave her a massage, helped her walk around the room, and, even after waiting for the elevator repair to finish, finally took her mother outside. Margaret was able to enjoy the good weather and the feeling of returning to life before the injury. After a short walk, Margaret and Annie had lunch, and her daughter began to apologize. "Mom, please forgive me. I'm leaving a bit early today. I want to prepare a surprise for Andy. If you get tired of the television, you have the keys, your phone is charged. Call if you need anything." "Okay, run along, Annie. Happy anniversary to you and Andrew. Imagine, it's been 10 years already." Kissing her mother, Anna hurried along the route she had planned in advance. Spring, long since established and rapidly approaching summer, offered a gentle warmth, and the sweet and slightly tart scent of lilac set a romantic mood. Contrary to superstitions about getting married in May, she hadn't had to suffer in her second marriage. On the contrary, Andrew was a quiet harbor for her. There were no wild passions between them, but there was mutual affection and respect. Anna valued her husband for not prying into her soul, not tormenting her with jealousy, not demanding she bear an heir. Even when he declared his serious intentions, Annie stated directly that children were absolutely not in her plans. This didn't frighten the man. A few years later, Andrew asked if she had changed her mind, but upon hearing a categorical "no," he didn't ask for reasons and never raised the topic again. The man was a good partner, and of course, she loved him in her own way, with all the strength her wounded heart was capable of. Following the list she had made the day before, Annie bought drinks, picked up the squid that Andrew loved, and bought various small items: a crispy baguette, fresh lettuce, fruit. Gradually, 2 large bags, which Anna had foresightedly brought with her, filled up. Hanging them on her shoulders, she ran into the confectionery for the cake. Now she could go home. Approaching the entrance, Anna looked hopefully at their parking spot and breathed a sigh of relief. The car wasn't there. This meant she would have time to set the table, hang balloons, and get dressed before her husband returned. Mentally praising herself for the convenient bags that left one hand free, the woman, hurriedly opening the door, finally found herself in their apartment. Putting the cake box on the ottoman, Annie suddenly froze in surprise. A foreign sound was brazenly intruding into the usual hum of the house, coming from the kitchen. Strange. There were no unfamiliar shoes on the mat, no strange things visible, but she clearly heard the clinking of dishes, as if someone was moving a plate or a mug. Andrew and Anna didn't keep pets. They had always wanted a dog, but the misfortune with her mother had adjusted that plan. Perhaps it would have been smarter to go out onto the landing, close the door, and call her husband. But from exhaustion, Anna didn't act as safety dictated. Automatically slipping off her sneakers, and with the bag still on her shoulders, the woman entered the kitchen and almost collapsed from surprise. With one leg tucked under him, a boy about 6 years old was sitting on a chair. The unknown guest was completely engrossed in eating. On the table in front of him was Andrew's huge mug, a bottle of water, and a deep plate into which Annie had put a layered salad the night before. A spoon sticking out of the side clearly indicated that the dish had already been sampled. The child was biting into cured sausage with appetite, and the woman, flooded with memories, felt a pang in her heart. It was too painful to act rationally. For a few seconds, Annie even thought she was hallucinating from overwork. However, the vision was too realistic. The sound, the image, and even the smell of the sausage. The engrossed boy only tore himself away from his meal after Anna, her voice a little hoarse from nervous shock, attracted his attention. "Hey, hello, who are you? And what are you doing here?" The boy jumped off the chair and, without letting go of the sausage, reported, "My name is Leo. Uncle Andrew brought me here and told me to wait for him. He said I could eat whatever I wanted, so I'm eating. The sausage is tasty, just very salty." It didn't even occur to Anna that the person the boy called Uncle Andrew wasn't her husband. Such an incredible coincidence, like in a movie where the hero doesn't realize he's opened someone else's apartment with his keys, simply couldn't happen. Anna could vouch that their apartment design was unique. Of course, there must be a logical explanation for the boy's appearance, the woman thought. She herself had married Andrew in the spring, and the boy's last name meant nothing to her. Her husband was an only child, but as far as Annie knew, he had cousins. They hadn't been invited to their modest wedding, and she didn't know them either by face or by name. So, perhaps Leo was the child of one of her husband's cousins. But why had he brought him here without even warning her? Thrown off balance, Anna couldn't concentrate. Her thoughts were jumbled, and she hadn't managed to come up with a theory when Andrew called. Coming out of her stupor, Annie finally took off her bags and answered the call. The man spoke quickly, not allowing his wife to get a word in. "Darling, we just missed each other. I just left Margaret's apartment and I'll be there in literally 20 minutes and explain everything. In the meantime, set the table." The bewildered woman felt a little better and replied briefly, "Okay." She felt Leo's gaze very distinctly but couldn't find the strength to look him in the eyes. The woman brought her new slippers, bought for the summer, from the hallway and offered, "Leo, it's hot indoors in sneakers. Here, take these slippers, put them on. It'll be more comfortable." The child obeyed silently. To ease the tension and occupy the boy who had been left with her, but at the same time avoid having to talk to him much, Annie asked, "Leo, can you blow up balloons?" The boy nodded. The woman quickly went to the room, brought a package, opened it, then, obeying an impulse, rinsed the tips through which Leo was to inflate the balloons and handed them to him, asking, "Don't inflate them too much. When you get tired, rest, and I'll help you tie them. Agreed?" The child nodded busily and asked without embarrassment, "Is your name Annie?" Annie shrugged. "My name can be called in different ways, both Anna and Annie." Leo's eyes widened in surprise. "But that's what girls are called. Are you a girl?" Anna chuckled. "Yes, I'm a girl. It's just a name." Silence hung in the kitchen. The boy, lost in thought, occupied himself with the balloons. Annie, keeping an eye on her guest, began unpacking the bags, preparing and setting the table. She put the cake in the refrigerator and, pausing to tie balloons, felt not irritation, but a gnawing pain. She wasn't angry at her husband, but various thoughts were swirling in her head. The woman felt the curious gaze of the little guest, but didn't dare to look him in the eyes. So they watched each other, barely communicating. Engrossed in her tasks, Anna didn't even notice Andrew enter the kitchen with a huge bouquet of roses in a large bag. The man put his load on the floor and handed his wife the flowers. "Annie, congratulations to you and me on our holiday. I see you've already met Leo, made friends. Simply wonderful. Well, let's celebrate." The boy, visibly cheerful, said shyly, "Happy anniversary." And when everyone sat down at the table after the fuss, he boasted loudly, "Uncle Andrew, I blew up the balloons myself, and Annie helped tie them. We prepared a good surprise for you." The man mumbled something indistinct in response to the boy's chirping, praising Leo and his wife, who hadn't even touched her food. There was tension in the apartment, and Andrew set about trying to fix the situation. He quietly turned on some music and began enthusiastically praising the dishes. Then he proposed a toast to Annie's beauty and charm, took out a small box, handed it to her, and said, "Congratulations, I hope you like it." The woman, her thoughts jumbled, only now remembered her own gift. Leaving the somber company for a moment, Anna, clutching the unopened box in her palm, retrieved the hidden present. Returning, she handed her husband the package and limited herself to the phrase, "Happy Tin Anniversary." Andrew, tearing open the paper hastily, began loudly admiring the tin flask and showing it to Leo. The woman felt awkward and again sank into her thoughts. This was not at all how she had imagined the celebration. She had wanted to prepare a surprise, but her husband had managed not just to surprise her, but to completely throw her off balance. "Surprises again!" Annie coughed violently, choking on water, when she heard the question. "Annie, how about Leo stays with us for a couple of weeks?" Anna was silent, not knowing what to say. Andrew tried to justify himself. "I stopped by Margaret's to pick you up. On the way home, I wanted to explain everything, but I didn't have time, and this surprise happened. I'm sorry I didn't warn you, but I was sure I'd find you at your mother's and tell you about the guest on the way." Andrew's monologue ended with a prolonged silence. Anna moved her food around with a fork, not lifting her eyes. He, flustered, also didn't know what else to say. With childish spontaneity, Leo broke the silence, asking brightly, "Auntie Annie, thank you. I've eaten. Can I try the cake now?" The boy showed his empty plate. With a stony face, Anna got up and went to the refrigerator. She wanted to scream, stomp her feet, sob, and smash the dishes, stained, like her faith in her husband's honesty. She knew it wouldn't make things easier. The most likely explanation for Leo's appearance seemed to her to be the version of her husband's infidelity. With her whole being, Annie now hated the man she had loved for 10 years, as much as she was capable of. Andrew, who knew his wife well, guessed from her abrupt movements that in a little while she would say everything she was thinking. He decided to take the boy away from the table to the seating area, where he could be distracted from the upcoming adult conversation. "Leo, come on, I'll turn on the game console for you. My games are mostly complicated, but we'll find something for you. or I'll put on cartoons if you want. Will I be able to eat the cake? The boy asked interestedly. Of course you can have anything there. The boy's eyes sparkled. He trustingly followed his host to the cozy corner. Anna, who had overheard the conversation, cut a large piece of cake, put it on a plate, turned on the kettle, and watched it boil. The click of it switching off brought her out of her reverie. After making the tea, the woman put a cup, a sugar bowl, and the plate with cake on a tray, and then carried it to the table near the gaming area. Andrew was showing Leo his game collection, but the boy, clearly well-mannered, stopped and thanked her. "Thank you very much." The woman nodded, and turning sharply, left. When Andrew came into the kitchen, he found a strange scene. Anna was sitting on the floor, holding dirty children's sneakers in her hands, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. The man tried to joke. "Hey, Annie, what's wrong? So what if a child walked in with dirty shoes? We'll turn on the robot vacuum, let it work. It's nothing. Is it worth getting upset over dust? Especially today, it's a holiday." Anna looked at her husband in a way that made him uncomfortable, and quietly said, "Andy, I think I've said more than once that I don't want to be in the same space with children for long periods. It's beyond my strength. Perhaps there were valid circumstances for your action, or as you called it, a surprise, and you can be understood. Only, forgive me, I have no desire to deal with explanations today. I'm going to Mom's now and just—" Andrew couldn't understand the reason for such a categorical decision, but he could clearly see that Annie was on the verge of a breakdown, so he suggested, "Annie, I'm truly very sorry I didn't warn you, but I can explain everything. I think when you hear it, you'll understand that I couldn't have acted differently. I'll wait until you're ready to talk." The woman unexpectedly carefully placed the sneakers on the floor, wiped away her tears with the back of her hand, and walked towards the door as if she hadn't heard her husband. Andrew took her hand and asked, "Annie, wait a minute. I'll call a taxi to Margaret's house so I don't have to worry about you." Annie nodded, and soon was riding in the car, fidgeting with her handbag strap. The road was clear, and the journey took less time than during rush hour. As soon as the woman opened the door, she heard, "Susan, come in, dear. I'm not feeling very well." Anna closed the door and, taking off her shoes, went into her mother's bedroom. Margaret became alarmed. "Annie, why are you back? Didn't Andrew come home? By my calculations, your celebration should be in full swing. And you're here. Daughter, what happened?" Anna went to her mother's bed, sat on the floor, and resting her head on Margaret's arm, told her everything that had happened since she returned home. Finishing her story, Annie voiced her assumption. "Mom, I'm almost certain that Leo is Andrew's illegitimate son. The boy looks about 6 years old, which means my husband was cheating on me, and even had the audacity to present me with proof of his infidelity on our wedding anniversary." Margaret tried to calm her daughter. "I'm sure Andrew can explain everything. I feel that he loves you. Believe my experience, he would hardly risk the relationship and cheat." However, Annie cried non-stop. Margaret stroked her daughter, so adult but defenseless, sobbing, but said no more words, because they were all powerless. Finally, when the tears dried up, Anna silently got up from the floor and went to wash her swollen face. The woman felt devastated. Returning to her mother, Annie admitted, "I'm very tired today. Do you mind if I lie down?" Margaret didn't object or suggest talking or having dinner. She understood that her daughter needed to rest. "Of course, Annie, but let's take some sedative, at least valerian. It will be good for both of us." Annie complied with her mother's request and went to sleep. The nervous tension was so strong that the woman blacked out and woke up when the clock showed 10 in the morning. Jumping up, Annie rushed to the kitchen, where she found her mother stirring pancake batter. "Good morning, daughter. You're just in time. We'll have breakfast now." Working together, the women made pancakes and, as if by agreement, didn't mention yesterday's events. While Annie was washing the dishes, Margaret asked, "Daughter, please go to the theater with Susan. She has 2 tickets for a good play, excellent seats. Her niece gave them to her. They were supposed to go, but the niece got sick, and the other relatives can't join her. Someone's at the dacha, someone's on a business trip. Anyway, the ticket will go to waste. It's a shame. Annie shook her head. Mom, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm not in the mood at all. However, if Margaret had set her mind on something, she knew how to insist. That's why you should go, because you're not in the mood. Art is great for distracting your thoughts and changing your emotions. Please, daughter, not for the ticket's sake, but for mine. Although Anna had to obey, she categorically refused the suggestion to stop by the hairdresser. After waiting for Susan to take Annie away, Margaret called her son-in-law and said in an almost commanding tone, Andrew, Annie will be gone for about 3 hours. Come over, we need to talk. The man didn't resist but warned, Margaret, I'll definitely come, but I have no one to leave Leo with. I could probably find a nanny, but I wouldn't trust the boy to just anyone, so I can only come with him. Do you mind? The woman sighed. I don't mind. Excellent, then I'll be at your place with Leo in half an hour. 30 minutes later, Margaret, carefully walking to the door with her walker, let Andrew and Leo in. The man introduced the child, and the boy politely greeted her. The hostess tried not to show her nervousness and hospitably invited Leo into the kitchen. Come in, I have a television there and pastries are waiting. Would you like cocoa or tea? The child announced that coffee was the tastiest for him, but children weren't allowed to have it, and he would have tea because he was too grown up for cocoa. Margaret almost laughed in surprise, but she quickly composed herself, and turning to Andrew asked, Can I offer Leo some chicory then? It's almost like coffee. The boy was delighted. I want to try this chicory. Uncle Andrew, can I? Andrew agreed, and when the hostess had prepared the treat, the man handed the boy his phone and explained, I need to talk to Margaret. Please stay here, eat, play on the phone, maybe even watch videos, okay? Of course, Uncle Andrew. I can manage fine without supervision, don't worry. Watching this, Margaret could barely hold back tears, and hiding her emotions, quietly went into the room she still old-fashionedly called the parlor. Andrew followed, eager to know what she wanted to talk to him about. The woman settled into an armchair, and the man sat on the sofa opposite so they could talk comfortably. The hostess watched her son-in-law attentively, but he couldn't wait, and asked without preamble, Margaret, explain why Anna reacted so strangely to Leo's appearance. I admit, it's my fault for not warning her. But we're adults. Instead of talking calmly, she just ran off to you. Is that normal? The woman didn't interrupt her son-in-law's indignant speech, but didn't rush to answer, instead asking a counter-question. Before we start a difficult conversation to try and help my daughter save her family, I need to be sure it's worth it. Just tell me honestly, is Leo your illegitimate son? The man's indignation knew no bounds. No, of course not. I never even thought of cheating on Annie. I love and respect her very much. My reaction to children is starting to scare me. Leo ended up with us because of a desperate situation. Anna didn't even try to get along with him, although, as you noticed, he is a well-behaved, intelligent, and charming boy. Andrew's answer calmed the agitated woman, and taking a deep breath, as if preparing for a parachute jump, she decided to tell the truth. Well, everything hidden comes to light. As her husband, you have the right to know why my daughter avoids contact with children. I think I have the right to tell you her story, which was first a happy fairy tale, and then turned into a terrible nightmare that ruined her life. Margaret began the story of Anna's childhood, her studies, her marriage to David, the son of influential parents. She spoke of the birth of twins, Peter and Nicholas, of Anna's happiness, and her unwillingness to hire a nanny. Margaret recounted the untimely death of her husband and the support of David's family, and the joyful news of a new pregnancy. Then her voice trembled as she moved on to the terrible tragedy, David's car breaking down, a walk through the park, thin ice on the lake, and the death of her 6-year-old sons. Margaret described David's despair, Anna's nervous breakdown, the loss of her unborn child, her alienation from her husband, and her complete withdrawal into herself. She told how Anna couldn't bear to see children, about her attempts to get revenge on David, and the forced move to another city to hide her daughter from memories and sympathy. Don't think that Annie hates children, it's just that it still hurts her. She even refuses the possibility of becoming a mother again, out of fear of repeating the nightmare. Margaret fell silent, emotionally drained. Andrew noticed her paleness and hurried to the kitchen for water. Leo was engrossed in playing on the phone. Andrew stroked Leo's head, filled a glass, and returned. "I'm sorry I made you remember all that." Margaret said bitterly, "Oh, Andrew, if only it could be forgotten. Perhaps you should have known about Annie's past sooner. I just couldn't bring myself to tell you. My daughter, as I understand it, still can't talk about it either." The man looked at her, puzzled. Honestly, I couldn't even imagine that such a tragedy could be hidden behind Annie's unwillingness to become a mother. I thought she didn't want to ruin her figure. It's hard to even imagine what she felt when she saw Leo. What a surprise I gave her, right on our anniversary. How can I ask for Annie's forgiveness now so she understands? I truly had nowhere else to bring Leo, and for a number of reasons, the boy needs to be sheltered for a week or two, in a safe place where his parents' enemies wouldn't even think to look. Andrew told how he had accidentally met his old friend Oleg, whom he hadn't seen in 15 years. Oleg had come to resolve problems for his sister and her husband, who were involved in a lawsuit with criminal individuals. Oleg was most worried about his nephew Leo and was looking for a safe place to hide him. And then I appeared out of nowhere. Oleg's idea of taking Leo away seemed perfect. There were no threads that could lead the criminals to his trail. It's also good that the boy has a strong character, growing up to be a real man. His parents and Oleg told him he had to stay with me, and he accepted it calmly. I picked him up like in a detective story, to avoid being caught on cameras. We agreed with Oleg to get in touch in a week, and he himself has to call when the issue is resolved. Leo is simply an ideal boy. He settled into the unfamiliar place easily and even went to bed by himself after brushing his teeth. All that's left is to wait for Oleg's call. It's easy for me to communicate with Leo, but I have to go to work on Monday, and I can hardly take him with me. Now I don't know what to do at all." Andrew fell silent, and then Anna's voice unexpectedly rang out. "It's nothing special. You'll go to work as usual, and I'll stay with Leo. Just leave me the car so I don't have to drag the boy on public transport to Mom's and back." It turned out that, contrary to Margaret's calculations, her daughter had already returned from the theater and seemed to have heard part of her husband's story. To her mother's preemptive question, Annie explained, "I couldn't watch the play at the theater. I went to the restroom, washed my face, and realized I couldn't go back and stare at the stage. I texted Susan to apologize and came here. It turns out I came back at the right time. Perhaps I needed to hear Leo's story from the outside because, Andrew, forgive me, I suspected you of infidelity. I probably wouldn't have believed you if you had told me yesterday. Today I can look at it more rationally. Mom, you don't mind if I visit you with Leo?" Margaret, trying not to scare away the changes, cautiously said, "Of course, come visit." She wanted to add something else, but her eyes stung, and she decided to change the subject. "Annie, Andrew, aren't you hungry? I could eat something right now. Let's go to the kitchen. Besides, I need to check on Leo, see if he's bored. I completely forgot about hospitality." The boy, seeing Anna, didn't forget to say hello, and the woman's voice trembled slightly when she replied. Andrew, who now understood the reason for his wife's strange behavior, was amazed by her resilience. Having gone through such a trial, she had endured and never tried to evoke pity with stories about what had happened. Anna gently but persistently declined Margaret's attempts to feed everyone. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, but I think we'll go home. I'll stop by tomorrow closer to lunchtime." Andrew, realizing he had been forgiven, was very happy and warmly said goodbye to Margaret, promising, "We'll all visit you together tomorrow. If you feel up to it and the weather is warm, we can go out into nature. What do you think of that?" "Andrew, wonderful. Let's not plan too far ahead." Saying goodbye to the hostess, Annie, Andrew, and Leo set off for the other end of the city. The man got behind the wheel and saw in the mirror how carefully his wife buckled the boy into his seatbelt. It was obvious that for Anna, this was a natural, automatic gesture. She was clearly a tender, caring mother, loved her children very much, and after the tragedy, suffered in a way you wouldn't wish on an enemy. Carefully parking the car, the man carried the sleeping Leo up to the apartment in his arms. Anna smoothed the sheet, gently took off the boy's shoes, and covered him with a blanket. Watching his wife, Andrew felt incredible tenderness. His beloved woman had revealed a side of herself he hadn't seen before. He realized he had made absolutely the right choice. Later, closing the kitchen door, they drank tea with the leftover cake and, as if the wall of misunderstanding from yesterday hadn't existed, planned Sunday with jokes and kisses. The man finally decided to bring up the unpleasant topic and admitted, "Annie, I was a real idiot. I almost ruined everything, and I want to thank you very much for your understanding." His wife smiled. "Well, honestly, I overreacted too. So I suggest we forget about it. Let's move on." The weekend passed cheerfully, and even better than the couple had anticipated. They managed to coax Margaret out for a walk too. She was less happy about the sunny day than about her daughter's happy eyes. Annie gladly answered Leo's questions and constantly made sure he wasn't in danger. Neither her mother nor her husband dared to make comments or reproach her for being overprotective. Leo seemed not to notice the care. By arrangement with Anna, he called her by her first name, without the word auntie, and looked pleased with the outing. After taking Margaret home after the walk, the trio lingered because it was impossible to leave without eating. No one objected. Late in the evening, as Annie was tucking Leo into bed, the boy quietly asked, "Do you think my parents are okay? Will I see them soon?" Trying to keep her voice steady, Anna replied, "Of course they're okay. They'll finish everything they need to do very soon, and you'll see them." The reassured boy fell asleep. Annie, afraid of waking him, beckoned her husband to the kitchen and began asking him about the situation Leo's parents were involved in. "Annie, honestly, I don't know all the details. Oleg gave me a brief overview, but I understood that some real thugs are after his sister and her husband." The woman began to ask clarifying questions, unexpected ones. "Are these criminals from the city you went to for the business trip? Or are they outsiders? Did they call each other by any nicknames?" Andrew told her everything he knew, but the information wasn't enough for Anna, and she suddenly asked, "Can you contact Oleg urgently? I need a few clarifications from him to try and help Leo's parents. He's doing well and is comfortable with us, I hope. But it shouldn't be that a mother and son are separated for a long time." From Anna's voice, it was impossible to tell how deeply she had taken the situation to heart. But now, knowing her past, Andrew understood how difficult it was for her. "Actually, Oleg gave me a password for a chat in case of something like this, where messages disappear. I think I can try to contact him." The man opened the website, entered the information he had memorized, and a few minutes later exclaimed happily, "It worked! Oleg greeted me." Annie foresightedly advised, "Andrew, ask him a question that will let you know for sure if it's your friend you're talking to, and if you have even the slightest doubt, immediately close the site and take out the SIM card." Alarmed by his wife's suspicions, Andrew quickly typed a few phrases and waited for a response. Reading the message, the man breathed a sigh of relief. "Everything's fine. It's definitely Oleg," he replied with our code phrase. Anna nodded and asked, "Excellent. Write to Oleg that your wife will be messaging him now and give me the phone. I'll find out everything I need." "Nothing surprises me anymore," Andrew said, handing her the phone. She messaged for quite a while, then grabbed a pen, quickly wrote down a number on a bread wrapper, tore off a corner of the paper, squeezed it in her hand, and handed the phone back to her husband. That's it. I'm going to the bathroom. I need to make a call. Write to Oleg to log into the messenger in an hour. Then, I hope, I can give him something concrete. Anna left the kitchen and went to the bathroom, where the sound insulation was best. Taking a few deep breaths, the woman dialed her former father-in-law's number, which she had memorized. The phone was unavailable. Annie gathered her willpower and dialed her ex-husband's number. Soon his voice answered, "Hello, don't be silent." Anna's voice was hoarse with emotion. "David. Hello, it's Annie. I need your help. More precisely, your father will probably resolve the situation, but I can't reach him. The robot says his phone is out of range." The man's demanding tone softened. "Annie, I'm glad to hear from you. My father is abroad right now, but if you tell me what the problem is, I will certainly try to help. I work in the regional prosecutor's office now, so all my connections are at your service." "Thank you," the woman replied, told him everything she had learned, and dictated the number she had written down. "Okay, Annie, I understand everything. It's not the simplest matter, but it's solvable. I think for every thug, there's a more influential force. I'll try to help. Warn your acquaintance that I'll call tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, depending on how things go, from my phone, and he can safely answer." "Thank you, David." Without waiting for a reply, Anna ended the conversation, which had been difficult for her, and washed her face with ice water, hoping to regain her composure. Even during the conversation with David, she had wanted to apologize, but couldn't. The bitter resentment towards the man's carelessness, which had caused her to lose her children, still burned in her heart. At the same time, Annie understood that without the intervention of her ex-husband, who had extensive connections, Leo's family was doomed, and she wanted to protect the boy and save his parents. For some time, the woman sat in the bathroom, regulating her heartbeat with breathing exercises. Seeing that almost an hour had passed, she returned to the kitchen to Andrew and told him what David had said. The man messaged his friend the information and hugged Annie tightly. He saw how his beloved woman had become drawn in the last hour and didn't know how to help. He wanted to protect her from all misfortunes, but instead, Annie had to, as Andrew guessed, turn to the person who had almost ruined her life. The conversation had agitated the woman. She freed herself from Andrew's embrace and automatically began clearing the table, not paying attention to the fact that she was throwing food into the trash. Finally, the man took her hand and suggested, "Stop this fuss. It's been a difficult day. We need to rest." Even listening to her sleeping husband's peaceful breathing, Annie couldn't calm down. Images of her little ones appeared before her eyes. There were Peter and Nicholas smiling toothless smiles, then going to kindergarten for the first time and clinging to the window, waving their little hands, giving her cards for Mother's Day. There they were, conspiring, loudly applauding instead of sleeping when she sang a lullaby. How many pleasant moments were stored in her memory, and how brutally everything was erased by an accident. How many times had she warned her sons not to take risks, but they hadn't listened. However, what was the point of being angry now? Peter and Nicholas were gone, and their father was the only hope that Leo would soon be hugged by his mother. Let David at least be able to help this unknown woman. Leo stirred and mumbled something, and Anna, slipping out from under her husband's arm, hurried to the boy. She carefully adjusted the blanket, felt his forehead, fearing a fever, and breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that everything was all right. Leo opened his eyes, and Annie, sitting on the edge of the sofa, began quietly singing a lullaby. The boy had long since fallen asleep, but the woman remained sitting next to him. She wanted the child to return to his parents as soon as possible, and at the same time, she knew she would miss spending time with him. When the sky, visible through the gap in the curtains, lightened, Anna quietly went to the kitchen to make coffee and work on documents, because there was no point in going to sleep. In these dawn hours, perhaps Leo's fate was being decided somewhere, but Annie was powerless to influence it. She had done all she could, overcoming her resentment, and now all that remained was to wait for the result. Carefully examining the papers, the woman made notes, wrote out suggestions, and putting everything back in the folder, began quietly preparing breakfast. She decided to ask her boss for the day off so as not to tire the boy with travel. Waiting for a suitable time, Annie wrote to her boss that she would send the documents through her husband and began thinking about how to please the little guest, who, of course, was worried about the separation, although he tried to be brave. When Andrew, showered but still yawning, looked into the kitchen, Annie had almost everything ready. She invited her husband to the table and asked, "Andy, stop by Paul's on your way. Give him the folder. I warned him that I wouldn't be able to stop by for a few days. If he needs anything, he can send it by email or through you. In extreme cases, I'll come by, but I don't want to stress Leo. I wanted to take him to Mom's and then to the amusement park. Why should he play on the computer all the time? Let him have some fun so he doesn't think about sad things. He seemed to have nightmares last night." Andrew agreed with his wife's plan and, after a quick breakfast, thanked her and started getting ready. Leo woke up later, but Annie didn't wake him. She wanted the boy not to feel uncomfortable. The woman fed the child and then suggested, "Let's stop by my mom's for a little while, and then we'll go somewhere to have fun." A message arrived on Annie's phone, and she smiled, seeing the money transfer. Andrew had made sure his wife wouldn't have financial problems. The woman smiled and asked the boy, "Would you like to go to the amusement park? It's not far, and there's lots of fun stuff there. A fun house, rope courses, a climbing wall. Do you like active fun like that, or the cinema? We can go to the cinema too. I haven't seen anything on the big screen in ages." Leo admitted shyly, "To be honest, I'd rather go to the amusement park." "Well, then that's where we'll go." Margaret was very happy when her daughter came with the boy. It meant that Annie had believed her husband and hadn't acted rashly. From her own traumatic memories, she saw that Annie seemed to have thawed after spending time with Leo, and she barely managed to get them to leave early. "Daughter, I feel great today. Go, have fun. If anything happens, of course, I'll call. But don't worry, really. I feel like I have more energy today after yesterday's walk." Turning to the boy, Margaret asked, "Leo, please, have a good time for yourself and for me." The boy nodded seriously and promised, "I'll ask Annie to take pictures and send them to you. You have a good smartphone, right?" The woman smiled and praised him. "Clever boy, that's a great idea. Exactly. That way I'll feel like I'm having fun with you. Annie, check if your phone is charged." Anna reassured her mother, saying she could charge her phone in the car. Soon the guests left Margaret, and left alone, she began to dream that her daughter would finally decide to become a mother again. It was obvious to the woman that Annie was excellent with children, but had suffered for so many years, avoiding contact with them. "May everything turn out well for my long-suffering girl," Margaret prayed aloud. Annie, driving especially carefully, took Leo to have fun and felt the weight of the voluntarily assumed responsibility pressing down on her. The boy was the first to ask to go on the rope course, and the woman agreed, although the sight of the ropes at height made her want to grab the child and not let go. Without taking her eyes off him, Anna watched the boy playing and occasionally took photos, but she didn't dare to get distracted to send the pictures to her mother. The woman felt that if she looked away for even a second, something would happen to the boy. The thought came to her of the despair Leo's mother must have been in to agree to give her son to an almost complete stranger. Such an action could only be decided upon due to a real threat to life. So she, Annie, had no right to let down the woman who knew minimal information. The name, age, and the fact that she and her husband were involved in a situation they couldn't escape from. However, no matter how you looked at it, Annie was in a better position. Sarah, Leo's mother, knew even less about the people sheltering her son. The Monday filled with entertainment flew by unnoticed. The boy, tired from active games, fell asleep after dinner and rested peacefully until morning, without crying out. Andrew and Anna talked quietly in the kitchen. The woman enthusiastically described how bravely Leo conquered the attractions and showed photos. Tomorrow, after visiting Mom, I want to take our guests to museums and then to the cinema. Or vice versa, whatever Leo wants. If you can, join us. It will be fun. He's so funny and sometimes says profound things. Today he told me that adults deliberately look serious so that people are afraid of them and no one bothers them. Can you imagine? The man agreed that there was some sense in this conclusion and suggested, Annie, let's go to sleep too, like Leo, because tomorrow, as I understand it, will be no less busy. Neither Tuesday nor Wednesday brought news from David or the boy's relatives. Although the child visited entertainment and educational places, his mood worsened. He became more thoughtful and sad more often. Andrew and Annie understood that the boy missed his family but couldn't influence the situation. Only on Thursday, when Annie and Leo were visiting Margaret, did the long-awaited call come. David informed his ex-wife that the main difficulties were behind them and warned, "There are still some minor things to sort out, but they are trivial. The main thing is that the boy is no longer in danger. His parents have already left for the city where you live. I warned them to call in advance when they are approaching and clarify the address. In short, I will see this through. You don't need to worry." Anna sincerely thanked her ex-husband. "Thank you, David, and forgive me for everything." The man's voice rang out when he replied to the woman who had caused him so much pain. "Annie, you have no idea how happy I am to hear from you, even if it's for this reason. I wish you happiness, and if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I'll always be happy to help." Anna said goodbye to her ex-husband, and Margaret, who had overheard the conversation, couldn't believe her ears. It seemed her Annie was communicating quite normally with the man she had once loved and then hated. "Mom, we need to leave. Leo's parents are on their way, and I need to give him a bath." The child understood that he would soon see his mom and dad and began jumping around the room shouting, "Hooray!" Annie could barely calm him down. In her joy, Margaret gave the boy a photo of herself as a keepsake and a collection of stamps that he had liked. "Here, Leo, you can look at the album and remember me." The child promised, "Thank you, but I won't forget you, Grandma Maggie, even without the stamps." Taking advantage of the moment, Anna called her husband to share the good news, but it turned out he already knew. "Annie, Oleg already told me that thanks to your help, everything worked out. I'm taking a taxi home now to prepare for our guests." Anna was a little sad to part with the boy who had awakened memories of the happiest days with her sons, and she invited him to visit a toy store on the way. "You know, I really want to give you something too. Choose whatever you want." The boy didn't resist, but, apparently shy, didn't spend long walking between the shelves and soon took an inexpensive robot from the shelf. On the way to the checkout, Anna put a plane, which Leo had once talked about, and several board games into the basket. "Oh, so much stuff!" the child exclaimed in surprise. "What a holiday today!" Anna agreed. "Yes, Leo, today is a very big holiday." By the time the doorbell rang, the boy was freshly bathed, and the table was set. Sarah, as soon as she crossed the threshold, rushed to her son, hugging and showering him with kisses. The boy's father handed Anna flowers, and Oleg gave Andrew a strong, manly hug. After Leo took on the role of an adult and introduced his parents to the hosts, everyone sat down at the table. Sarah volunteered to help Anna and admitted, "If it weren't for your kindness, I don't know how we would have managed. I can't imagine how to express my gratitude. My husband and I have collected some money to compensate for Leo's expenses and your inconvenience." Annie turned pale and replied, "Sarah, please put that envelope away immediately. Don't offend me. Your boy will be going to school soon. Spend that money on him. And if it's not too much trouble, sometimes send my husband and me photos of him. That will be the best gratitude." A flustered Sarah burst into tears and hugged Anna. When Leo, worried about the absence of his mom and Annie, looked into the kitchen, he saw that the women were crying and asked in an adult manner, "What happened? Did you get hurt? Did you cut yourselves? Did you burn yourselves? Annie and Sarah simultaneously wiped away their tears. His mother reassured her son. Everything is fine, darling. Everything is just perfect. Hugging the boy, she lifted him up and twirled him around. Annie watched the happy people and felt no envy, but wished that all troubles would remain in the past for this family. After the guests left, Anna leaned trustingly against her husband and confessed, "You know, I think I'm ready for motherhood. Leo proved to me that children are the greatest happiness." The man didn't try to dissuade his wife. Soon, Anna delighted him and Margaret with the news of her pregnancy. Right on time and without complications, the woman gave birth to a daughter. They named the girl Victoria, after Andrew's friend and as a symbol of victory over the terrible memories of the past.